Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong.
We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison.
Cognitive liberty. The fact that as adults, if we're not hurting anybody else, we should have the right to explore the contours of our own consciousness without any mediation or legislation on the part of somebody else.
Reject authority. Authority is a lie.
Or is it perception?
Information is power, but we have to seize the opportunity.
Okay. Well, welcome back to Mikeadelic. We got a great episode right now. I have with me Dr. Tanya Mate. How you doing, Tanya?
Hi, I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And yeah, this sounds like it's like almost like we weren't even talking before. They don't know. No one's ever gonna know. Real professional.
That's right.
So Dr. Tanya Mate, with me here. She is the Integration Director at the Temple of the Way of Light, naturopathic doctor, whose main base of operations is Vancouver. Is that right?
That's right.
Cool. And I had the pleasure of spending like almost 2 weeks with Dr. Tanya Mate down in Peru at the Temple of the Way of Light, and really grateful to be, I think, the inaugural group in what is now becoming a staple function at the Temple of the Way of Light. Is that right?
It'll be a sometimes function at least, but I'm going to correct you on one pronunciation before we go on.
Go ahead.
You got the Tanya excellent and perfect, which is, I love it.
Right.
Mate is also an A sounding A.
Wait, say that one more time.
Tanya Mate.
Mate.
And this is it's not my name, so it's my name now, but
yeah,
for the people.
Yeah, where'd that name come from, by the way?
From Hungary.
That sounds like a familiar name. We know that name, right? Isn't there a Dr. Gabor Mate?
Oh, and you got the Gabor right, too. So he's a stickler for pronunciation. And in Hungarian, the emphasis is always on the first syllable of a word. And the A's have accents over them properly. So Gabor Mate is my father-in-law. He's a medical doctor based out of Vancouver as well, who's done a lot of work with ayahuasca and with addiction and with stress, and has kind of developed his own style of what he's now calling compassionate inquiry. We'll see if that's just a placeholder name or a name that will last.
Wow, yeah, cool. I mean, yeah, he's somebody that is definitely, I guess, of a almost celebrity status within this field. And I remember when we were down at the retreat, I came up to you, I think maybe the second day, and I said, yeah, I think I know who this Gabor guy is. I've heard of a couple of his things. And we spoke a little bit, and then you had told me about some of his work and some of his books. And now, since I've been back, I mean, I can't get enough of this kind of work. I mean, I've been watching a lot of videos that he's given talks on. In the middle of reading one of his books, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Battles with Addiction. Yeah, I mean, it's just really fantastic. It's very like almost mind-blowing when you get to be exposed to something that you kind of thought you knew about, and now there's just a whole new world opened up for me in terms of learning about this stuff. So it's fantastic. And also I think for the time that we spent down there at the Temple of the Way of Light, I think for like 7 or 8 days or so, I was calling you Tanya until finally the last day I was like, I'm pretty sure I've been calling you the wrong name. It's Tanya, right? And you're like, yeah, that's what they call me in Canada.
Yeah, most Americans say Tanya, and I kind of
Yeah.
Have just given up really correcting people, because if you look me in the eyes and you recognize my face, it doesn't really matter what you call me.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. No, I know. I guess it's weird. I have such an easy name. You know, it's just Mike. You know, no one's ever looking at me like, is it Mike, or you know? So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I take advantage of the pronunciation. So you were saying that you went on a road trip recently with your husband Daniel. Where did you guys travel to?
we're in the middle of a road trip right now, actually.
Nice.
So yeah, I was at the temple for all of July facilitating workshops, and Daniel came down to facilitate the one at the end of the month with me. And, we were doing some pretty intense and intensive work while we were there, and decided it might be good to do something fun. And he loves road trips. Our first official date in real life was a road trip from New York to New Orleans and back.
No.
Yeah.
Shut up.
We had been kind of...
Who is this, man? This is like, that's out of a movie.
Yeah, we're pretty romantic.
Wow. Oh, my God. That's amazing. Who does that? That's crazy.
Yeah, well, hello, nice to meet you.
Well, that's very impressive. I mean, hey, if anybody's listening out there, the key to a woman's heart, road trip.
Road trip, yeah. So now we live in Vancouver, and we're currently in San Francisco. And we spent a couple days in Portland and a couple days, in rivers and lakes and stuff on the way down. And we're going to be here for a while. We've got quite a few friends down here, and then head back up, maybe through Eastern Oregon or maybe along the coast. Not sure yet.
Cool. I love those kinds of trips. Those are my favorite kind of trips, where you kind of don't really exactly know. You have a general idea and you're kind of going with the flow.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. I'm jealous in a way, because here I am. I got, thrown out of a serene, peaceful jungle life, being in harmony and one with everything, into chaotic New York City. And yeah, it's been challenging, but it's been good. It's glad to be home, and integration is the key here. So that's what I've been trying to work on, and thanks to you, I've been doing very well with that. So you were just, great, absolutely fantastic. I was so happy and just felt fortunate and lucky to have you and everybody else that we had there when we went to the temple with that group of about 20 people that we had. It couldn't have gone any better. I felt really like it was just such a great experience, and I learned so much. And I was wondering, so you guys had a group of people come in after our time there. So did you have some time in between to kind of like relax, and then you had the next group come in? What was that like?
Yeah, there were actually, 9 or 10 days in between the two workshops. So there was some time to decompress and freshen up before the next group of people came.
Yeah.
And I had originally planned actually to do a tobacco diet in Iquitos with somebody working.
I remember you told me that.
Yeah. And I decided instead to go back to the temple and stay there and stay in the jungle and keep learning from and with the people working there. So participated in 5 ceremonies for myself, which was a really, really helpful, healing, amazing thing to do in between the 2 workshops that I was facilitating.
Wow. Yeah, so there's this theme of you being the teacher, but also the student as well. You're always going back and you're always learning more, so you can then better help the guests that come down that are seeking, some of these people that are in dire circumstances, a lot of them sometimes very desperate and seeking some kind of hope, and you're able to give that to them because you're going to these places, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the most important part is really doing my own work. And there's this really great video. It's an interview with Anne Shulgin from the MAPS conference in 2013, where she's talking about MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. And she talks about, and this is, there's differences between all these different psychedelic medicines, but there's also a lot of similarities and parallels. And basically the work means you're facing yourself at the deepest level. And whether you're doing that through psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy or spirit-assisted ayahuasca work or therapy or yoga or meditation, you're going to the same place and you're facing those deepest, darkest parts of yourself. And so she compares it to there being like a bull in the basement, and you go down into the basement and you step inside this bull and you take a look to see what it's like to look from inside that place of your deepest fears and how powerful that is. But then she also says, like, nobody who hasn't done that for themselves has the right to try and take anybody else there.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think, I think that's the way that all everyone in a position practicing something professionally and trying to heal or help people should take that. So much of Western medicine kind of ignores that approach. It's just kind of a prescribe and get out of my office kind of thing.
Yeah, could you imagine every medical doctor tried every drug they prescribed on themselves first?
That would be an interesting game show. I'd like to see something like that.
Yeah.
So is that kind of the main difference between being a naturopathic doctor and being a kind of regular medical doctor?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that's the main difference. Definitely in our schooling, they really encourage us to try everything that we're going to give to people on ourselves first, whether it's diets or whether it's exercise or whether it's cold showers or whether it's herbs or any of these things. I can also prescribe drugs, and I don't test those on myself first. But I try to do as many of the things that I might tell someone else to do on myself first. But really the main difference between naturopathic medicine and Western medicine is the philosophy, the kind of approach to healing. So we get very similar pathology, anatomy, physiology training, science training as medical doctors, similar length of time spent in the program, similar number of clinical hours, but the way that we get taught to think about healing is different. So instead of trying to suppress symptoms, we see symptoms as evidence that the body's trying to heal itself, and we look for ways to support that process and to really treat the root cause of whatever is manifesting.
How is it possible that there's a contrary to that side of the equation? Like how is it possible that there's another field of medicine that counters that? I think that it's so obvious in the world that we live in today that that's clearly the approach that we need to be taking. I guess what's your take on that? I mean, do you experience resistance from maybe some of your peers or colleagues or people that in the medical field who are maybe physicians and stuff? And I know Gabor started as a physician, or he is a physician, but has kind of changed his ways. Can you speak a little bit to that, kind of maybe people that aren't taking this approach and how they look at it and view it? Is there a resistance to that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple layers to that. I mean, just naturopathic medicine, from our side, like as a professional, like a professional statement that everyone in the profession would agree with, we're not at all against Western medicine. It's totally important and it totally has a place. Like, obviously we need hospitals. Right. From a personal perspective, like I don't think anyone ever develops something like a drug because they want to hurt people. Like everybody's coming from the worldview and the paradigm that they think works the best to help people. And when it comes to chronic illness, Western medicine just doesn't have the answers. So people get prescribed drugs and then they get prescribed drugs to manage the side effects of those other drugs. And at some point, people start to realize that that doesn't work. But I don't think it's malintent on the part of anybody. It's just a system that doesn't function that well. Right. As for ayahuasca specific work or psychedelic work in general, there's people who are open to it and there's people who aren't open to it. I don't know what to say beyond that. For me, it's my favorite kind of work. It's what really helps catalyze deep healing. Yeah. You could spend 20 years in therapy, you could spend 10 years meditating, and you could get to these same places. And for some people, that's the right way to go. And then for other people, really doing this deep level of healing in a ceremony with these highly skilled, highly trained shaman doctors, it allows something to happen much quicker and at a much deeper level than most people are familiar with. Okay, that's a great answer, and I'd love to continue on this point, but I just want to back it up a little bit, and we'll come back to that. Let's just start off, like, how did you get to this point? How did you get to where you are now? Like, where did it all start? I mean, where did it all start?
Yeah, where did it all begin? Did you just like stumble upon a shot glass of ayahuasca on a hike one day when you were 18? And
No, I had some psychedelic experiences as a teenager and young enough, but nothing was ever guided. I've been curious for a long time. Yeah. But I was trained as a geneticist originally, and I worked in fisheries research for a long time before discovering and pursuing naturopathic medicine. And then I had this realization one day that, hey, I want to help people.
Right.
and studying fish isn't really letting me do that in the most effective way. And I had for a long time
not in the most direct way, but yeah.
Not in the most direct way. Like, maybe it helps give people some food, but, I'm looking at personal transformation here.
Right.
And for a long time, so in my undergrad, I studied a lot of art and philosophy as electives. So it was genetics focused, but with a lot of other branches of interest. Mm-hmm. And I had been looking for something that was a blend of these things. And I'd been trying to create something that was a blend of art and science and philosophy. And when I found naturopathic medicine, it already was that. And I kind of never felt something that had fit that well before. And so I did that. And I think in my second year of schooling, which was 5-ish years ago, when I went on the first retreat with Gabor. And I had heard about his work from a few different people. I lived in the downtown east side in Vancouver, which is where a lot of his addictions book is based and where a lot of his addictions work comes from. Mm-hmm. It's a neighborhood with an extremely high population of homeless, drug addicted, and dual diagnosis people. And I was living down there, so I heard about his work and had a lot of friends that worked for some of the organizations that provide support to those people. And then I don't even know how I heard about his work with ayahuasca, actually, and I don't know how I ended up on the mailing list, but somehow I got an email, and I applied to go on this retreat. And right around the time that happened, they put out a documentary. It's called The Jungle Prescription.
Oh, fantastic documentary, yeah.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, absolutely everybody watch that one. I think it's the best documentary that currently exists about ayahuasca.
It's great, yeah.
And you can watch it for free online. It's just 45 minutes to an hour with David Suzuki and Gabor's work, and it features Jacques Mabit as well. So that documentary came out, and then Health Canada called Gabor up on the phone and was like, "We're sorry, you're doing what? You need to stop." And so he did, and the retreat that I was supposed to go on got canceled. And then a year later, I ended up going on my first retreat with him.
So how did he wind up making that happen if they canceled it on him?
So he used to do them in Canada, and now they don't do them in Canada
I see.
anymore.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's how they moved it out of the country.
Gotcha.
And as soon as I got there, I was like, it felt home in a kind of one of those ways that I have experienced before, where this is what I want to do. So I started... Yeah, and both the ceremony side of things and the daytime processing side of things. And this is Gabor has developed his kind of own, what I called compassionate inquiry, but his own style of ayahuasca processing and integration that really helps bring some depth of understanding and really helps bring the mind on board for these sometimes really difficult to understand experiences. It really catalyzes a deeper level of healing.
Yeah.
So I was really intrigued by all of that, and I went back to these retreats and started trying to learn, and then I met his son and tried not to fall in love with him, and did anyway.
You failed, doctor. You
Totally
failed.
Yeah. So, and then we got married, and now I'm Tanya Mate, and it's really beautiful. And we started doing this work together a little bit. So we've trained with his dad in a kind of apprentice fashion anyway, to try and learn as much as possible about his approach, but then also bringing, obviously, a lot of my own personal experience to the way that I do the work. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the story.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, it's like a comic book, a superhero origin story. Like.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you knew about Gabor when you were in school, or you had heard about him? Was that correct?
I had heard about him before school. Someone had mentioned his books to me.
Yeah.
But I had never met him or read his books until I went on a retreat with him.
Right. Okay. Yeah. He's kind of this presence kind of floating around on the internet and everywhere. And it's the same kind of thing with me. Like, I heard about him and I knew his work was important, and I wasn't really exactly sure. And then I went down to the retreat and I met you, and then you kind of introduced me further into it. And the method, the technique, if you want to call it, is. Can you explain kind of like how? So for me, I kind of started doing psychedelics and experimenting on my own. But like you said, there's no one really to guide you. It's kind of just like your peers. Maybe you're at a music festival and someone's like, hey, I want to take some shrooms or something, and you're like, cool, and you trip out, and like maybe you see Cascade DJing in front of you and he's 80 feet tall. Maybe something like that happens, and you have like a cool visual experience and you're chuckling with your friends, but nobody's really. No, there's really something that's, I feel like, is lost in our culture, and that is something like to the rites of passage, like people who are coming of age, young men and women, who need to kind of be inducted into humanity or something, along those lines, and for us to have these kinds of tools and to have them not really be available because of their legality and things like that, and have been demonized. It's just like the Wild West. Just people out there, kids are out there, and they're just eating stuff and doing stuff, and nobody knows, and nobody really knows what's going on and what to make of it, and you kind of have to just figure it out for yourself. And there's a lot of people that are going through a lot of emotional issues, and they feel that some of these kinds of substances or plant medicines or drugs, whatever, they connect to them, whatever they wind up doing. And for me, psychedelics connected to me. Like I had experimented with all kinds of things, but psychedelics was really the thing where I was like, oh, this is something that can really, like, I feel like this is much more than what I've been told it is, and unfortunately, kids, when I grew up in school, it was, you're going to take LSD and you're going to jump off of a roof and you're going to die and you're going to go insane and all these crazy stories. Now we're living in a time where people are able to be exposed to these kinds of things a little bit more and more. There's organizations out there like MAPS and the retreats that Gabor's doing and the work that you're doing with the temple. So it's like becoming more mainstream now. It's like really exciting, and the whole process, I guess if I have to use the word again, of processing, the processing of the experience was lost for so long. I mean, and now we're like, now it's going on, and what we experienced at the temple, what I experienced, I thought was just so. I mean, this is like the future here. Like this is this is the future of healing. I mean, for deep rooted, problems. And I went in there with expectations for sure. I had heard stories, ayahuasca and all kinds of things, and it's so much more than what you think it will be, and it's different every time. And what I thought it was going to be, I'm so happy that it wasn't that, because what I got was so much better, so much better than any kind of like trippy visuals. I mean, that's cool, but that's not why we're there. You know what I mean? That's not why. And a lot of people kind of associate that with it. So, what I'm getting at is that, like, this process, right? This process, this is so important. The work that you're doing is so important, because it's not just people going into the jungle and drinking a powerful psychedelic and tripping out. This is not what's happening at all. This is people that are going down to the jungle and having profound experiences, life-changing experiences that are helping them deal with some traumas in their lives, things that they might have not known about. And then you're there with your team of people that are working with you to help guide them through this. I mean, just talk a little bit about that. Talk about the integration process, what it means to you, and how this like came about and your learning and understanding of it. Just go into that a little bit, because this is the most important part as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, so there's two parts. And the first is not about the integration, but actually the people who are facilitating the ceremonies themselves. And there's a very, very, very big difference between some kids doing mushrooms and going to the park or going to a festival or whatever, and then going into a ceremony with indigenous or not, but people who are trained in a specific healing lineage, generations and generations of medicine experience, and working with plant spirits in the Shipibo tradition anyway, working with plants that they have spent years working with and learning from. To be able to do the kind of surgical work that people need to heal in the ceremony itself. And so you drink ayahuasca in your living room, it's not going to be the same. And I also really, really strongly recommend against it, as going to work with people who are skilled in facilitating those ceremonies. And this is true of other psychedelics as well. I know less about them, but if you do a psychedelic psychotherapy session where someone is actually guiding you through that experience, it's very different from doing it on your own. And then if you're looking at ceremonial things, where you're actually working with spirit-assisted healthcare systems, that's another level of healing that is possible. So I really want to give credit to the shamans, the maestros, the maestras who are working in these ceremonies at the temple. And anywhere else, but specifically at the temple. They're highly skilled, highly trained, highly disciplined, highly compassionate, and this work would not be possible without them.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, like, I totally agree with you. I mean, the Shipibo shamans that we were working with, they're in a way, like, they're doctors. I mean,
Absolutely.
They are doctors, and they are so compassionate and so kind, and really treat everybody with individual care and treatment. And it's amazing to me that you have, like, if you had just went to an ayahuasca retreat and you had one Shipibo shaman there, and that was all that was there. It was just them and then a couple other people. You're already getting a huge benefit. But now on top of that, the place that we were at, they had 5 of them, plus you, plus another facilitator, other people helping out, and then a supportive group of people, because everybody's sharing in their group processing. So it creates this kind of, fosters this team environment, and people are, it was just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's, I think the combination of things that you have happening there, from ancient tradition to newer, Western, I guess you would say, traditions, is a phenomenal combination, just an amazing mix.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So then back to this idea of integration, it's kind of like you can, in some psychedelic work, they'll break it down into 3 phases. So there's preparation, it's what you do beforehand. There's the experience, which is whatever ceremony or session you have. And then there's integration, which is everything that happens after that. And so the way that we're working, there's definitely preparation that everybody's doing. I do preparation sessions with some people by Skype, and then there's the dietary restrictions and the suggested reading and things that people are encouraged to do beforehand. Then there's the processing, and processing kind of straddles this line between preparation and integration, because partly it's setting the stage for integration when you go back into your life, partly it's helping people understand their experiences very soon after ceremony, and partly it's helping prepare them for the next ceremony that's still coming up. So this is this kind of straddling piece that is relatively unique, and this is what we've learned from Gabor, and this is what we're trying to bring more of to the temple. And then integration is what happens when you go home. And this is, you've talked about your own challenges, not very much specifically, but there's this whole safe container that happens in the jungle, and you're in this healing environment, and you're connected to yourself, and you're connected to other people. And then you go home, and I mean, I can hardly imagine a worse place to go integrate than Manhattan.
It's all right. I went on my rooftop every night and just howled like a coyote.
Perfect.
I got it all out of
Yeah, but then you're smack up against all the stuff that was there. And,
yeah.
The environment that you live in was created from a certain set of beliefs that you had about yourself, and is created based on a certain version of yourself that you think that you are. And then you go away and do a whole bunch of healing work, and you come back. And this question of integration doesn't just apply to ayahuasca work or to psychedelic work, but anyone who's been on a long backpacking trip, you go away for a month or 3 months, and you come home, and you have changed and grown so much, and everybody else seems the same.
Yes.
How do you relate to them? How do you stay related to yourself? How do you stay connected to what's important and who you want to be? So this question of environment becomes really important. You go back into the environment that is designed, whether consciously or not, to draw out a certain version of yourself. But now you're this new healed person. You're connected with older parts of yourself, actually. So you've gotten back closer to your roots. But the environment's still the same. How do you approach that? How do you make changes that help you stay connected to the healed version of yourself? So part of the processing is really helping people interpret their experiences. So a lot of what happens in day-to-day life is you interpret your world based on a set of beliefs that you developed at some point, usually in early childhood. So everything runs through that filter. And with ayahuasca work, that filter can get stripped away really quickly. But sometimes people will still interpret their ceremony experiences through that filter. So part of what we're doing is just helping people calibrate. We're questioning the interpretations of things to help make sure that it's happening in the clearest way possible for people. So we don't actually interpret it for them. We just help people to make clear interpretations for themselves.
Yes, I noticed that, and I remember the first day that we had a group processing session, I remember thinking to myself, "Damn, she's good." Like I remember thinking, like, you are just so good, and the other person that was there too. I don't know if she wants to be named, but
yeah, I don't know either. So we'll just
the other person that was there as well that was helping facilitate the group, and I'm like, these people are incredible because, I have such a tendency to be like. You're just very good at walking people down the path to helping them answer their own questions. A lot of times when people are sharing in the group, and I notice the answer is right in what they're saying, and it's just a matter of kind of getting them to see that and getting them to do that. And I thought you handled that very well, very very gently and with care. Unlike a person like me who would just be like, "This is what's wrong with you. I know what it is," But I'm learning. I'm still learning. I got a bunch of books. I got a bunch of homework I'm doing. So yeah. I mean that's wonderful. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you have some more to say or?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I always.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
No, but that's part of the beauty of the approach, and it's something that I'm still learning too. I'm always still learning, but really helping people see it for themselves. It's so much more powerful when it happens that way.
Yeah, just what does that feel like for you? When you're helping someone like that and you're working them through that. I mean, explain the feeling that you get.
That's a great question. It's way more fun also when you help someone see it for themselves than just telling them.
Right.
It's kind of like playing with a child. I don't know if you've ever walked around the city. It's almost like when the child is showing you things. Like you're walking around, but they have such an innocent and open worldview. And, they see things that us busy people tend to just skip over, like birds and animals and colors and things. And when they point that out to you and you see it, and when you're actually able to get into the imaginative space and see it from that child's point of view, it's so magical.
Yes, it is.
And it would go the other direction too. Like when you're trying to teach a child how to do something, or say you're drawing a picture with a child, but really giving them the space to create something. It's way more fun than if you take their hand and draw a perfect circle with them, but really allowing for the process to unfold.
I think that's beautiful the way that you put that, and I feel like that is a microcosm for our culture, our world. I mean, there's so many people that are, unfortunately, some of the heavy influencers in our society want to tell us the way that things should be done and want to do it for us instead of, letting people have free choices to make for themselves and kind of giving people a little bit more trust and things like that. And unfortunately, my personal opinion is that we live in a very sick kind of world in this world, and that's one of the main things that I've noticed since I've been back. Is just, I've always noticed that, so it's always been my thing. But it's difficult to kind of not lecture for me personally. It's difficult for me to not lecture other people and to show them, you know what I mean? So it's that constant. I think one of the things I learned is that I don't necessarily need to have, I'm not going to be this peaceful, Buddha Adyashanti kind of guy who's going to be meditating on a mountain, 24/7 in perfect bliss and with harmony. That's not necessarily the idea of healing or awakening to a higher level of consciousness, as I feel like I've experienced. But it's more so noticing what's going on in my life more. Like I feel way more present than I've ever been, and I'm still the emotion. I'll still get angry. Things will happen. I'll have the I'll have the feeling like I want to force my way. I want to show you with how it's done, but I'm acknowledging that more now. I'm bringing myself back into. Is that something that you see with a lot of people with these ayahuasca integrations that are going on after? Like, are you working with people that are experiencing similar types of things?
In terms, I mean, one thing I heard you talking about is this awareness.
Awareness,
this
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
Separation, and even Adyashanti, who doesn't live on a mountain,
Right.
I remember he says something like, "Yeah, I still have thoughts. I just don't believe them anymore."
Yeah.
So there becomes this gap between what's happening and this identification with your emotions and your thoughts and who you think you are, and then actually a little bit of space to take a moment and observe it. And sometimes outwardly it doesn't actually look any different yet. And you see this with addiction all the time. Like, that awareness is actually the first step. And you might choose to do the exact same things, but if you're aware that you're doing it, it's not coming from an unconscious place anymore. So there's actually a level of awakeness to that.
Right.
So even if you're talking to someone and you're trying to fix what their problem is, or you're talking over top of them, or what doesn't, like, however it's coming out, if you can see yourself doing it, it's so much more powerful than if you didn't know you were doing it.
Yes,
And the more you can observe it happening, the less hold it will have, and over time it shifts.
But that takes some time.
It takes some time, and it takes practice, and it takes effort, and it takes intentionality. If you don't want it to change, then it's not going to.
Wow, yeah, that's something. That's a really great point you just made, and I'm pretty sure that you said that in your most recent article on NDNR. Was that right? Yeah, article on ayahuasca tradition, context, and clinical applications. It's people wanna they have to want to be healed, right? They have to want to know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there has to be effort. There has to be a willingness, and there has to be a dedication. And, and this happens in stages and layers too. Sometimes people will not be ready yet. And at some point, the discomfort of staying in your patterns becomes greater than taking the leap. And only you can say when that point is.
Yeah. A lot of people that listen to this show have messaged me asking me about ayahuasca, and they said, I feel like I really relate to you and what you've said. And so just to those people, like, this isn't something that's just magic. I mean, well, it is pretty magical, but it's not it's not it's not something that's going to, you need to put in the work, right? You need to have the intentions, and that's something that we did with each ceremony. We would set intentions, and why don't you talk a little bit about the setting of the intention for healing with ayahuasca?
Yeah, sure. And just on the idea of magic too, ayahuasca is totally mysterious. It lets us tap into the great mystery of life, and I like the word magic too. But magic in a more psychological sense is like something that happens instantly, something you think you have control over. And in that sense, like, ayahuasca is not a pill that you can take that's just going to take all your problems away. It's not a magic wand. It's definitely something that you have to show up and you have to do the work, and setting a strong intention is part of doing that work. And so ayahuasca is a doctor and a teacher. So part of what happens is comes in and heals you in the places that you need to be healed. It'll go to energetic blocks in your body and to traumas and help loosen those things up. And then part of one aspect of ayahuasca is this teacher aspect. So it can actually teach you things about yourself and about the world. And if you imagine like hiking up to the top of a mountain to meet this guru, and you have one question to ask, if you're going to go that far, you're going to put some effort into what that question is that you actually ask, I would hope. Like, one way of doing it is to go up there and be like, all right, I don't know. Can you please tell me something that will help me? I'm totally open. That's one way of doing it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or in my head, I actually imagine a teacher like standing at a chalkboard, and he's like a really cool teacher, and this young student comes up to ask him like, hey, I want to be your student. Can you teach me? And the teacher's like, okay, what do you want to learn? And the student's like, I don't know. And it's like, that's all right, because if he's a masterful teacher, and ayahuasca is very much a masterful teacher, it's going to teach you anyway. It's going to find the things that you need. But the more you can actually meet ayahuasca or meet the medicine with what it is that you're working on, the deeper you'll be able to go, and the greater the level of healing you'll be able to achieve. So say you have a behavior in your life. What's a good one?
How about alcoholism?
Yeah, sure. Addictions are good examples of things, actually, because everybody has them to some extent. But say you have alcoholism. You drink. You don't really want to be drinking anymore. You can go to ayahuasca and say, I don't want to be an alcoholic anymore. Can you help me with this? But the deeper you're actually able to get into the motivation of the alcoholism, like the purpose that the starting to stutter, getting excited. The purpose that the alcohol is serving as an escape, what emotions you're trying to avoid by drinking, the more specific and the deepest you can go with that, the more you're actually meeting the medicine, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes total sense. And this is something that I find really fascinating. And so actually I was talking in a Facebook group earlier today with some people, and the addiction came up. And I was kind of speaking about it like I really know, because I'm like halfway through Gabor's book, so I'm really I can really speak on this matter now, you know. But
You're an expert.
yeah, I'm a real expert now. Yeah, might as well just put a doctor in front of my name. Why not?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, the kind of like resistance that you get from some people, because they're like, no, you know, you don't understand. This is an addictive thing, and it's like, well, okay, well, what's causing this addiction? You know, a lot of times. So I think, from my understanding, it was in Gabor's work and the work that you're doing, there's things that we develop out of certain emotions that have certain things that have happened to us when we were between ages 0 to 7 or so, right? 5 or 7. And we develop these coping mechanisms to deal with things. And addiction is one of those coping mechanisms to kind of fill a void in our life. We're not really addressing the real issue. We're burying it down, and addiction can be anything, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally an expert. Yeah, I mean, the definition of addiction is any behavior, whether it's with a substance or a behavior or anything that, despite causing harm, you persist in. And that can be harm to yourself or harm to the people around you. So it's really a subjective definition. You have to be the one, you or the people close to you have to be the ones to say whether or not what you're doing is causing harm. You know, at a physiological level, there's things that happen with tolerance and dependence and these kinds of things, but that's actually less interesting to me than the actual addictive process. You know, you can have an addiction to anything, and you can have a healthy relationship with anything. It's not the substance or behavior that is inherently addictive, but the relationship with it that is coming from a place of trying to escape pain. And, you know, what's wrong with trying to escape pain?
Yeah.
Really, there's nothing wrong with it. It's one way of doing things. And for a lot of people, it's the only way of doing things. If it's something that provides relief, something that provides comfort, something that provides numbing when there aren't any other options, why wouldn't you do that thing? But again, at some point, the discomfort of doing it and the cost of doing it becomes so great that something else must be necessary. And this is where, you know, this is people declare bottom or people hit bottom. You can declare bottom at any time, and this is where AA works from. With AA, they don't really go to the trauma. And the definition of trauma is not what happened, but the disconnect from yourself that happened as a result of that thing. But with AA, they don't really go to childhood experiences. And some people will talk about it, but that's not the focus of that work. And it kind of, to me, is a very important piece if true healing is to occur. So AA is really helpful, and all the whole Anything Anonymous, all the 12-step programs. They have done a lot of good work for a lot of people. And they don't necessarily get to the roots of where the addiction comes from.
Yeah, they don't get to the root. But if somebody gets some benefit out of it, I mean, who are we to say that that's not good? I mean, I guess it's good if you get benefit out of it, but ultimately, I personally want to go deep. I want to know the root causes of everything. Do you have any personal experience with any sort of kind of ailment or addiction or something that you were working on originally that like you had like a profound change or a moment or anything like that you would feel comfortable talking about?
Well, yeah. Let me talk about my addiction first because it's kind of funny. But then I'll talk about what I was actually
A funny addiction.
It's kind of funny in that.
Were you like one of those people that eat like plastic or something?
No. It's not that funny. It's just Kettle chips. You know Kettle brand chips?
Oh, yeah.
I have had. I get ongoing addictions to food from time to time. Like there used to be this one kind of gluten-free cookie that you could only get at one store. And when I was in school, like I would leave class early to go get these cookies. And I would not buy one, but two of them so that I could have one for the morning as well. And it was like this cookie seeking behavior.
Yeah, cookie seeking habit, right?
Yeah. And same with Kettle chips. Like I would go to the store and I would not buy Kettle chips. I'd be like, no, that's all right. Like I don't need these. I don't need to eat these. And I would leave and I would go home. And 3 hours later, I'd be like, all right, where's the nearest store that's open? I need to get some Kettle chips right now. And tried many times to stop and could not stop. And when I went to the temple for the first time last November, I came back and I didn't have a Kettle chip addiction anymore. And it wasn't, there wasn't a particular thing that I associated with it in the first place. Like I didn't find the particular trauma that was causing me to be addicted to Kettle chips.
Right.
But I noticed the complete absence of it when I came back, which was pretty cool.
Wow, yeah, that is pretty cool. I mean, because I feel like I've totally been there myself, and it's such a strange behavior that internal monologue of going, okay, I gotta get a Snickers bar. If I don't have a Snickers bar right now, I'm gonna be very upset. I need a Snickers bar before I go to class. I gotta get those Kettle chips. Whatever it is, it's like. If someone was listening to that internal monologue, it'd be like, "What is this person crazy?" But yeah, that there are all these kinds of different forms of addiction, and actually, I had a similar thing. Like I've been my relationship to food has been so much better since I've been back from the temple, and I can't say that like I found necessarily the root cause really or whatever of some of the food, but I just. For whatever reason, I just feel like eating a lot healthier, and I have been, and I feel great. And I haven't eaten pork or beef since I've been back, and I've remained kind of gluten free as well. And
awesome.
Yeah, I think I've lost like 10 pounds, and so
good work.
Yeah, it just feels good, and yeah, I don't really like nothing really particularly like specifically happened where I was like, oh, like my dad used to beat me, so that's why I like pork, something, like there's nothing that happened. I just feel like that is now is that another thing like so talking about the ayahuasca experience, going deep, in the room with the bull, all this stuff, the intention, the preparation, the integration afterwards, but sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes ayahuasca just kind of works on you. Like I feel like this using this example, I just feel like I want to be better with my diet and nothing, and I didn't really get to the root of anything or find anything that was traumatic in my past that led me to food or anything like that. I just feel good, and I feel like ayahuasca maybe went into my gut or went into my brain and rewired some things.
That's possible. I bet if we looked, we could find the connection. Just like I bet if I looked a little bit closer, I could. I mean, I know what purpose food serves for me, and it really is a numbing. I'm very sensitive, and I get overwhelmed easily. And if I keep a lot of garbage foods in my system, I'm less sensitive. Why the addiction to that specific thing? Why only that kind of kettle chip or only that kind of cookie? I don't know. But. Like, it's not like you just went down and ayahuasca did some stuff to you. Like, you did some really deep personal work. And whether or not you can draw a direct connection from whatever you were working on from your own childhood and your own life experience to overeating or unhealthy eating, whatever work you did that allowed you to get in right relationship with yourself and to develop a greater sense of self-worth, whatever this is, it's directly related, whether you can see it or not.
Right. Okay. So it's something that kind of happened, but I just wasn't really fully aware of it because, to be honest, I mean the 5 ceremonies in total, it felt like almost like 1,000 years. So there was a lot of stuff that happened. I mean, I turned into a coyote. I was growling. I was doing secret karate one night. Like there was a lot of stuff that happened, and Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm really glad that I wrote everything down, and I was drawing pictures and things like that, because and talking about this now, actually, it continues to help me in my process as well. Mm-hmm. And so this is great. So let's talk a little bit about how did the second group go when your husband came out to work with you? Did you notice a difference in between the group that you worked with when I was there, or was there, did it seem like, okay, we kind of know what we're doing now with this program that we have here, or just
yeah. It was a little, but before I do that, I did say I was going to share something more personal than just the kettle chips.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Just
Go
not
ahead.
to,
Please,
bait
no.
people.
Hey, you're the doctor. I'm not going to,
Yeah, so when I first came to ayahuasca, I had been hit by a car maybe a year before that.
Oh.
I was on my bike riding on Commercial Drive in Vancouver, and a truck was turning left and had waited for some pedestrians to cross and then didn't see me and turned into me. And it wasn't that bad of an accident, but I ended up with kind of, like, I didn't fall off my bike, but I got whiplash of my whole spine, basically.
Ooh.
And then it just wouldn't get better. And I was doing everything. I was seeing a naturopathic doctor, and I was seeing a chiropractor, and I was seeing a Chinese medicine person, and I was seeing physiotherapists and massage therapists. And it's like nothing that I was doing was making it better. And over this period of time, I actually had like worsening symptoms of PTSD. So people would touch me and I would totally freak out. I would get triggered, I'd panic, I'd freeze, I'd cry. I was having panic attacks, I couldn't sleep. And it didn't really make any sense. It wasn't connected to the accident. It was like riding my bike was fine. I didn't get scared of trucks. I didn't get scared of bikes, but I had these reactions to touch that were really strange. So the first couple ceremonies I did, I got in a new relationship with pain, and my back stopped hurting, and I started sleeping again, and I recognized a whole bunch of awesome things about myself, and had some healing for a while, like some ease, and then I started going deeper, because then I kept falling off my bike, and I kept falling off my bike, and I kept falling off my bike. And I was like, what is going on?
Wow.
My interpretation of it is the universe was just like, hey, wake up. Like, there's something more to look at here. So then I kept going to ceremony and went really deep into my own childhood, uncovered some traumatic memories from there. And I had memories of sexual abuse come back that I didn't have previous to that. And this is something that happens for a lot of people in ceremony. And for some people, it's one way that ayahuasca tries to show them a greater theme, the underlying emotions. And then for other people, it's something that really happened. And for a long time, I was just in a place of, you know what, I don't really know I might never know for sure if this really happened, but I'm going to deal with what's coming up as a result anyway. So I spent a good year at least being scared to leave the house and having to wear like one particular scarf and one particular pair of socks that a friend gave me, and one crystal in this pocket and one crystal in this pocket. I could barely get on the SkyTrain or the subway. And just all this deep, deep fear was coming out of me for a long time. And, worked through that and kept going deeper and started dieting plants and have found an incredible amount of healing. But I've had to go to those places over and over and over again, and it hasn't been easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that was wow. Well, I'm glad we went back to that, because I mean that's some serious stuff. Yeah. So getting hit by this truck triggered this old trauma to come back. And then you investigated it for a long time, and then eventually, you got to the bottom of it, or?
Yeah, I mean, where I'm at right now is I believe that it happened, that it actually happened. It still doesn't really matter that much whether it happened or didn't happen, because all of the things that I experienced in terms of the fear and the body reactions and everything, like those were real. It doesn't matter what they were happening in response to.
Right.
But this is a really common thing that happens, is people will have some kind of accident, and that actually triggers either chronic pain or some kind of, like, the stress of that becomes too great for their body to handle, so it shuts down in some kind of way. So whether that shows up as depression or mental illness or fibromyalgia or pain or whatever, people can either get stuck with that and start taking medications, or you can look deeper and ask, like, what is my body actually trying to tell me with all of this stuff? And that's a long and difficult road, but it's worth it.
Yes, yeah, it's worth it because, and is this what's considered to be a holistic approach?
Maybe.
With the body, the mind and the body connection?
Yeah, from my perspective, yeah. There's a lot of holistic practitioners who don't look at trauma and who don't really look at the roots of things. They might work with energetic stuff, or they might look at biochemical pathways, and that's their definition of the root of things. So one of the guiding principles of naturopathic medicine is to treat the root cause. And from my perspective, the root cause of anything chronic is always psychospiritual. You have to look at those underlying emotions, those underlying beliefs, and the disconnect from spirit. Otherwise, you're not actually treating the root. But there are people who believe different things, so it's not to say that they're doing it wrong, they're just doing it differently.
Right. And sometimes people don't necessarily, the people that are affected by these things don't necessarily want to get to the root cause, right? They don't really necessarily, they're afraid or not ready to.
One of our teachers in school said she would give her patients, she would draw a dandelion, and above ground, here's this weed you have to deal with. Up here are your symptoms. There's these dandelion seeds blowing in the wind. Those are your symptoms. If you want to really get to, if you want to make it so that it doesn't come back again, you have to dig out the roots. This is going to take this, not that you can predict how long it's going to take, but this is going to be really hard work, and we have to go into this stuff. We can just give you some stuff that's going to help with these symptoms. What would you like to do? And then people actually have a choice as to whether they're going deep or just dealing with the symptoms. And neither of those is a wrong choice. People have to choose for themselves what level of healing they're looking for. Right.
Yes. But do you think that on some level, as a society or a culture that we are in here in the North American kind of Western culture, that there's a way that seems to be kind of pushing itself on us to go this way? I mean, this kind of mainstream, if you will, way. And with other kinds of alternative therapies and healing and things like that are not necessarily encouraged. I mean, maybe they're starting to be now. I'm not really quite sure.
But they're still called alternative therapies.
Right, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Well,
not necessarily encouraged.
Yeah.
Gabor is hopefully working on a book called Toxic Culture. That's exactly about this the alienation of Western society and the way that it's making us sick.
Right.
Because we're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from each other, and the solution tends to be more numbing, more stimulation, more anything to avoid what's really going on. And there's widespread denial of trauma in mainstream medicine. And it's a necessary piece of what's going on. More and more people are getting traumatized all the time, and there's all these chronic illnesses that we don't know how to deal with. Absolutely, if we want to affect change at a societal level, people have to do their own work first. People have to do their own work first. I want to quote a Beatles lyric, but it's...
what was it?
It's from Revolution. It's something like, you want to change the world, you got to free your mind instead. You got to start with yourself.
That's so true, and that's something that I've learned too. It's like, there's, when I look out at the the life that we're in here, it seems that we are kind of, as a human species, we seem to be building all these tools and all these things and all these gadgets and all this technology and flying into space with all these stuff that's supposed to detect alien life and the wars and the new technology that they're making for bombs and things like that. And it's like all this kind of pushing out. Where's the in? Where's the going in? Where's the advancement of the spiritual realm? I saw this article the other day of I think it was 30 under 30, or maybe this was last year, actually, not the other day, but it was 30 people that you should be paying attention to who are making a difference in the world. And it's all these entrepreneurs that are in this like tech space and Silicon Valley and Facebook and stuff, and it's like, where's the spiritual leaders? Where's like the cultural, the cultural kind of like opposition to this material reductionist kind of way, this like technology machine empire building way. I mean, where is that? It seems like we're really losing that. But thankfully for people like yourself and a couple other people, just a few other people, you guys are kind of bringing this back. And that's why I said before, when you were the work that you're doing at the temple, it's this combination of the ancient way and the Western way. And it's I believe it's the future of healing, for our civilization, for our society, to kind of bring people back, to sit them down, to wake them up. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know where I was going with that. I just kind of my own thoughts in that way. It just seems like we keep looking out and more, but it's really inside that we need to go. And it seems like that inside part, for whatever reason, just gets looked at as some kind of other thing, just some kind of just some silly bullshit that you just go to a therapist and talk about it, or here, take these pills or whatever.
Yeah, I saw a nice cartoon recently. It was like, I don't know, like whoever's creating the world, maybe you even posted this, like someone's creating the universe. It's like, where are we going to hide the secret to the universe? Like, should we put it on the highest mountain?
Oh, yeah,
no
that
way.
was me.
Man, yeah, fun. That was you. Yeah,
I posted
that.
One. Yeah. Well, so I got that from this guy, Wim Hof. He's a Dutch, I guess, I don't know what he would be labeled as, but basically one of the things that I knew I had to do when I came back from the temple, from my ayahuasca experience, was I needed to develop a daily morning practice to keep me in the state of mind that I wish to continue to be in, to this awakened temple state of mind, as I call it. And so I was like, well, what can I do? And I was like, what's calling to me? Anyway, I found this method, and it's a breathing practice. It's a combination of breathing, meditation, and yoga, and it was developed by this Dutch, I guess, daredevil. This guy, his name's Wim Hof. He hiked Mount Everest in nothing but his shorts. He holds like Guinness Book of World Records for being submerged in ice without having his core body temperature changed.
Wow.
Phenomenal individual. So his whole thing is about mind over matter and going in and all that stuff. So I've been doing that every day, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's just the best way to start my day for me. And that's where I got that from, about the spirit, about the soul. So we're coming up on about an hour now, and I don't want to keep you too long. But I just want to talk a little bit about maybe like, your vision for the future. Like, where do you see this going? Where do you, what are your goals? Tell me about kind of the things that you want to accomplish, with your work, and where you see this kind of work and specifically your work headed within the next, 5 to 10 years or so.
Yeah, well, ayahuasca is so popular. I mean, and I know mostly about ayahuasca. It gets lumped into psychedelic categories, but it's I don't consider it a psychedelic necessarily. But anyway, that's not the point.
I want to say, because the name of my show is called Mikeadelic, and it's funny because I originally started the show before I had ever had an ayahuasca experience, and now my view is totally changed. I am so much like in love with ayahuasca, and I don't look at it in those terms anymore, and I feel like it's still kind of in me and a part of me, and I'm much more interested in the inner kind of cultivation, spiritual kind of realm of things, rather than the psychedelic, trippy drug aspect, which is totally not the case for ayahuasca. Yeah.
But Mikeadelic doesn't sound quite as good. But on the psychedelic side of things, they expect MDMA to be legal for psychotherapeutic purposes in the next 5 years.
Yes.
Psilocybin as a pure compound should be close on its heels, and these measurable doses of things should be legal. And this is amazing, because some of the research that's coming out with these things, these are helping heal and cure conditions that have no hope in Western medicine. Treatment-resistant PTSD and depression and anxiety associated with end of life. These are really, really incredible results, and being published in mainstream journals. So that's great. On the ayahuasca side of things, for me, it's more, it's one thing to be able to use these substances and still work within the paradigm of Western medicine and Western society. But I'm more interested in getting outside of that. Not necessarily opposing it, but what else is out there? How can we actually do things in a way that is conscious, in a way that is connected? And ayahuasca done in ceremony and with people who have experience and training in traditions is a really powerful way to do that. There's pros and cons, I guess, to the popularity of ayahuasca, but in terms of the pros, it's helping get people connected to themselves and to spirit in a really rapid way that can sometimes be disorienting, but for the most part, I think can be really, really helpful if it's done in a safe and responsible and supported way. So part of my vision is that everybody who comes to ceremony has preparation and integration support, and that's part of what my role at the temple is really helping make sure that people are connected and providing a lot of that support myself. We also have a team of therapists and integration facilitators that we're working with so that everybody can really make sure they're getting help. Because when people just go back into their lives and don't talk to anybody, it doesn't work. I want to write a book. Right now, the two books that I recommend the most are The Presence Process by Michael Brown and The End of Your World by Adyashanti.
Oh, nice. I have that book as well. Nice.
Yeah, it's right. The End of Your World is, as far as I'm concerned, the best book about integration that's currently out there, but it's not about integration at all. So some kind of book about integration and best practices and how to approach like a plant spirit connected life back in Western society. Like, this is what I want to write about. And on a, part of, I love working with the temple for so many reasons, but they're really committed to sustainability and reciprocity and finding sustainable sources of ayahuasca and giving back to the Amazon and, planetary healing, environmental healing, not just individual healing, but the way that healing at the individual level actually has a ricochet effect into greater levels of existence, into communities and into ecosystems. I'm really interested in staying affiliated with that and seeing where that goes so that we're not just throwing our garbage out the window anymore.
Yeah, I was so amazed at, and I did a whole 4-part storytelling series about my what led me to ayahuasca and my trip down, and I kind of chronicled that whole thing. And I actually labeled one episode "The Temple of the Way of Light" because I found myself just praising it the entire episode because, it was absolute miracle that I wound up there. I had originally signed up for some other retreat, got a bad feeling, canceled it. All of a sudden, a spot opened up out of nowhere because they were originally booked, and I guess someone backed out. I was able to get there, and then just the entire what you just talked about, and it's not just one thing. It's a whole multifaceted healing on a planetary level, societal level, communal level, individual, all in sync together. And what an amazing place that they've created there. And so how can we get our entire world to look like that? Like, how can we get I'm going for the big. I'm going for the big unanswerable questions right here. It's the end of the episode, and I want to get something, like how do we achieve that? I mean, how can we?
You got to start with where you are.
Yeah, you got to start with where you are. So you have to start with yourself, and you have to start with your individual process, and then you can go on to help your community and so on and so forth, right?
In theory, sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that big question. I think it's a great question to, leave people with. Like, how do you actually create the world that you want? And creating the world that you want is quite different from changing the world that is, because I think it really does have to start with full acceptance of how things are, including yourself, including the world, including the state of everything. Like, this is how it is right now. Oh my God, this is how it is right now. How do I want it to be? Not how can I change this thing, but what do I actually want to create? And how can we do that together? Yeah.
So what would you say to people that are, thinking about they're interested in coming down there, or I know you have a website. Why don't you just tell people where they can find you and where to go, and if they're interested in ayahuasca, some things that resources they can find.
Yeah, awesome. So the Nature of Things documentary that I mentioned, The Jungle Prescription, that's a great one to watch. There's also a play called Medicine by my friend TJ Daw. You can watch that on YouTube. It's about his experience at a Gabor retreat, and it's really beautiful. For people with general interest in ayahuasca and wanting to know more about that, the temple website, templeofthewayoflight.org, actually has some of the best content out there. It's pretty extensive and pretty unbiased in terms of the information that it provides about tradition and culture and ayahuasca work. iCeers.org, ICEERS, also has a lot of really great information about ayahuasca and about ibogaine, or iboga. And then my website is drtanyamate.com, drtanyamate.com, and I'm happy to connect with people. I can answer a lot of questions myself by email, and then if people want to do actual sessions, we can do those by Skype too.
Oh, so you do sessions over Skype with people they're interested in working. Explain how does that go?
Yeah, more I do prep sessions for people who are already committed to it.
Oh, okay.
Just because if I was doing FAQ sessions for people all the time, it would take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, I do tend in Vancouver. I go for coffee with people quite a bit when people are interested in it, and you know, depending on my availability and the person's interest level and how specific their questions actually are, I'm happy to give some of my time to doing that. But sessions generally are more for people who are already committed to it. But in terms of answering questions by email, I'm happy to do that.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And yeah, great. That's great. So it's Dr. Tanya Mate.com. I'll put some links up when I post this and stuff like that for people. Yeah, because I just think that like you're doing really great work, and this is the future of healing. This is it. I mean, we're headed down a dark path, but we don't have to go that way. We can all see Dr. Tanya Mate and get healed. All right. Well, thanks so much, Tanya, for being on, and yeah, go check out her stuff. Go to the temple website, and I'll post those links. And it was great having you on. Great conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
You got it.
ra ni cơ ra nơ ba chế hòn nê bồ ra bờ ai na tô mai bờ ai ra ma vi đa kỳ si na ni tô a kỳ si na ni ca sa yo va kỳ si na me yo ra bờ ai bờ sao yo ra ra na mi yo cha ma yo ni va ro ka oi na ra ma va ro ka me ra ma va ro ka po ta ma na ma king va va ya ma king va na ma king yo ra cái rong kia ca mà nay on ta me yo ra ra sa ca no bi di bi sa ca no bi di bi sa ca no yo di ba ta me yo ra ra sa na cho ro vơ rùa kỳ ca yo ra vơ rùa kỳ ca ra ma vi ra ma ya ta ke ga e ro na ta ke ba ro no ta na yo ra ro no ta na vô yo di ba ta na pa di a no mi a ro yo ba no mi bi ga ya bi ra mi o da si o bo mi da mi ma ni bo mi da mi ma ni bo oi da so ne ra va cha ma ge me yo ra ge soi cho no bu no ko soi cho no ca no bơi ra nai ca no bơi ra nai me yo ra ma nai ra bơi ma nai yo ta na ma nai yo ta na ha to bơi ra bo ve mơ ga na bai ro ha ro ki ba ya ge hát to bơi trở về ba ya vô ai và ru ki ba ya ge và ru ki ba ya ge mi a ni che yo ba no hi wa ni che yo ba no me ra vợ yo ra nê che nê ra vai vai ra ro ya ma ge ra ro ya ma ge ra i ga bo ta yo e yo ta na me a ne che yo a no he wa ne che yo va no sana mai be vai sana mai be vai mi yo ra ra sana soi ma yo pa de va soi ma